Oi, 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 YouTube. It's been forever. It's literally been since last year. Look, I took a break from Dead by Daylight. I took a break from YouTube, but today we're making our return in 2022. And what a better way to make our return than a pretty beefy developer update for the mid chapter. There's a lot to go over here. We're going to try to gloss over a lot of it. Chapter that has a PTB starting tomorrow. Reminder, PTBs are only on Steam. You will not be able to play this on console or Switch until it hits full release, which will probably, since it's the 4th, be before the end of January. So probably somewhere between the 20th and 30th of January. So let's take a look real fast. They talked about future patch optimization plans. So what they're really talking about is here, they're talking about how difficult it could be to download an update, how big updates could be, and how annoying it could be to download those updates. So what they're going to be basically doing is compressing files down so that when you download those files, they're compressed, they're much smaller, and then they will sort of, if you will, unpack, which means that the patch time will be a lot faster. So this is going to be kind of a big deal. This is good. This is good. This is always good, right? So I wouldn't worry too much about this. So now they talk about future matchmaking optimization plans. This is a big one. All right, skill-based matchmaking, MMR. Look, everybody kind of pretends that MMR has been rough. Like, I'm going to be the first person to say MMR has been a difficult thing to have to deal with. It's frustrating, right? To play my favorite killers and to have to play super hard or get absolutely demolished. No longer can I run like Iron Grasp, Mad Grit, Agitation, and like meme around because I get like one hook or something. And it's just like, all right, like the meme's not even fun because you don't get to do it, right? So they say, though it may be polarizing, we want to be as transparent as possible when it comes to SBMM, as the discussions that stem from it are incredibly valuable to us as we continue to work on improvements. They say the game and the community are constantly changing, and the matchmaking system should always be adapted to support them. This is why we're constantly making changes behind the scenes. One recent example came from the influx of new players. We noticed that the default rating was placing first-time players against fairly experienced opponents, so to remedy this, we lowered the default rating. And there's actually like sub-chapters to this. We're just going to keep going here. So backfill improvements. If somebody leaves a lobby before it starts, the matchmaker needs to find a replacement. So what's been happening is if there's 3 people and there's a killer, or say there's 4 people and there's a killer and one person leaves, well, that lobby's already made, so it seems like the systems on the back end are just like, get somebody in there now. So they try to get somebody in there fast instead of getting somebody in there accurate. So that's why you may find in a match, especially if there was somebody backfilled, somebody that has like 70 or 80 or 100 hours going against a killer with like 3K hours because it's not choosing for accuracy. They're working to find a balance between that, right? Speed and accuracy, which is always a hard balance to strike, right? Do we want accurate matches or do we want fast matches, right? Disconnection. So currently SBMM system doesn't handle disconnects as well as it could. We're looking to make adjustments to handle them better. What this sounds like to me is when somebody disconnects and other players die because of it, their SBMM or their MMR goes down, right? Like if the killer kills everybody and there was a person who DC'd early, the survivors were never going to win. So it seems like they're going to be balancing the MMR to not maybe lower people's MMR that much or at all or something like that if like there's a disconnect. I really wish they were pushing for like bots to backfill disconnects, but I'm not sure that the bot technology is like scalable in difficulty right now, even though I'll say a warm body is better than nothing. Extended breaks. They say if somebody takes an extended break, they're going to be a little bit rusty. So we're hoping to introduce a mechanic that adjusts your ratings when you've been gone for a while. So, okay, that's, I mean, again, not inherently a bad thing. And general improvements. Now, they say this one's technical. The game will detect which server you have the best connection to. For players who have good connections to more than one server, we'd like to open up matchmaking and allow them to find matches with either sets of players. This can help balance out queue times at off-peak hours and improve the quality of the matches made. So this, again, is inherently a good thing. It's basically saying, like, look, if you're in a spot where you can connect to multiple different centers for matchmaking, we're going to open that up so that you have that ability so that queue times hopefully aren't really problematic in really insulated centralized areas. So the problem to this, these changes will take a while to develop, but we're confident that these will make notable improvements on the matchmaking system. So they're kind of hoping that they can figure all, and this is what it reads like to me. They're hoping they can figure all of this stuff out before they start really tweaking MMR and the data collection and things like that. I'm not sure I'm 100, like I'm on board with like them trying something, right? The good news is they're not just sitting going like, well, MMR is great. I think this is a pretty clear indicator that they know that MMR has like its huge pitfalls and problems. What it seems like they're trying to do now is even out the technical side of things, like backfilling, disconnection, breaks, and things like that, so that they can really go in then and start to like tweak data points and things. I'm not sure how much one has to do with the other. I really wish that it wasn't just a live, die, how many times you escape or how often you escape is your MMR type thing. I wish there was more nuance to that system, and it saddens me to say that they're not really looking into that. However, they're still looking at MMR, and to me, like, that's work they didn't need to do, so at least they're looking at, like, it signals that they're trying to figure things out. I'm just not sure they're looking in the right spots. Personally, not a dev, though, so... now, this is a big one, solo survivor experience, and I think this is one that's going to change MMR to some degree a little bit and change how like matchmaking happens in general. What they kind of say here basically is that like, look, solo survivor experience is a much harder experience than playing with a group. They say as skill goes up, so does the gap in survival rates between solo survivors and pre-made groups. At the top end of skill levels, the difference in escape rates can be as much as 15%. So what that's saying is that at a higher level of gameplay, Swift teams, or even half Swift teams, groups, escape 15% more often than survivor groups. Now, 15% doesn't sound like a lot. It's certainly not a majority, but when you think about the hundreds of thousands of matches that get played at any given point in time, that's a significant number, right? So they say this isn't great. The difference between solo survivors and groups make it difficult to find a perfect balance. If we balance killers around pre-made groups, then solo survivors get completely demolished, and that's something I've said for a long time. It's hard to balance for this top level of gameplay where people are in Swifts, because if you do that, then lower levels of gameplay and solo survivors just get blown out of the water. However, if we balance around solo survivors, killers basically cannot play against groups very effectively at all. And that's something that like, that's the catch-22 is like, what direction do they balance for? So they say, we're aiming to strike a balance between making the solo players feel like they're part of the team without being overbearing. For example, we want to share key pieces of information like what are my teammates doing, but not too much info, like showing everyone's exact location. We've had discussions about this for a long time. Scott Junn has talked about a ping system. A lot of people have said make Kindred base kit and things like that. And there have been discussions about what's too far and what's not too far, because if I'm playing killer and everyone has Kindred base kit, I'm mauling, right? Especially at a high level of gameplay. It's not fun, right? So I like this idea where they're going, okay, we can't give too much. Like, you give too much, it goes way off, all right? So they say, to put it simply, the idea is to bring solo survivors up to the same level, not give people excessive information that makes even pre-made groups stronger. They said we want to share a very early peek at one potential way of closing this gap, but before we do, we want to stress that this is in the very early stages. We're curious to hear what you think, but please keep in mind that it may change or even be scrapped entirely. So this is an important addendum, all right? If we think back to February of last year, when they released an update that changed locomotion, right? It changed how slugging looked. You couldn't moonwalk. Do we remember? We all remember that, right? They showed us the HUD, and then they were like, you now have the HUD, right? I like this idea. All right, this is the behavior that we have all been sort of petitioning for, right? They, in the past, have dropped big updates on us that made sweeping changes, and we went, why? What is, how? You didn't even talk to us. This is them talking to us, right? And I'll say, it's not perfect. It's probably not going to be perfect, and we don't actually have anything tangible here yet, but I will say this is good, right? I think that this is them finally going, we just gotta get ahead of stuff. We gotta let them in on things, right? And as a community, we should celebrate that, right? They're letting us in on things, all right? They say one feature we're experimenting with is a status icon next to each survivor's portrait in the HUD that lets you know what they're doing. I assume this means like there's a totem icon if they're on bones, there's a gen icon if they're on a gen, or something like that, so that you kind of know like what they're doing, but not where they're doing it, which I think strikes an interesting balance that we can talk about. This way, solo survivors can base their decision around what their teammates are doing, and partial groups get a better idea of their solo teammates' contributions, making everyone feel like more of a team. And I think that this is interesting because MMR sort of pushes people to not be as team-oriented when they're playing solo queue, right? If I survive, my MMR MMR goes up. So bye, Becky. This is interesting. There's a juxtaposition between encouraging independent play and then also promoting team-based play. And I don't hate this idea. If I see that 2 of my teammates are on a gen, I don't feel super bad about the killer chasing me. The idea in solo play is I've been running for a minute and there's not a gen popping, but if you see the icons, you're like, okay, they must have hopped on 2 separate generators because it takes 80 seconds to do a gen, right? So now you have an idea of like, okay, they might actually be doing things, right? And this is interesting. I think this will also cut down on toxicity of like, oh, my teammates got me killed or blah, blah, blah. But it also will increase it in the chances that like, I don't know, if someone's running around, what's the icon? If they're on a totem, the totem icon might pop up. If they're on a gen, the gen icon. If they're just running around, what is it? Just the running icon? Like, what are you running from, Becky? I'm being chased here. You know what I mean? So they say this is something that that can already be easily conveyed with a quick call out over voice chat, but is currently not available to solo survivors. I think that's a really great point. They say, once again, this is a very early preview, so early that we're still discussing this internally. Feel free to share your thoughts, but please keep in mind that none of this is final or confirmed. Depending on how things go, this feature may be changed or scrapped entirely before it even sees the light of day. We want to be open about this and keep you in the loop. The gap between solo survivors and groups is not going under the radar. It's something we're actively working on. It's something that's difficult to balance, and I think they hit the nail on the head, and I think this is actually an article that I'm going to write. The balance of this is difficult. Remember that Dead by Daylight is a game unlike anything else right now, right? And so they don't get to look at other games and go, what are they doing? Not really. VHS comes out and things like that. But for the most part, VHS has like proxy chat and proximity chat and things like that. But it's a different beast if you don't want to add that. And I don't think that that's necessarily the right way to go. I don't think proximity chats in video games are supplementary, especially with how people behave. So I think this is interesting. What do you guys know, or what do you guys think? I'd love to know down below, like just what are your thoughts? Be honest, but be tactful. If you're rude, I'm just gonna delete your comment. All right, no name calling or shit talking. All right, let's talk about the idea, right? What's the idea? How can we make it work better? All right, moving on. This is a long video. The betas tab. Sometimes we think some experimental features that we'd love some feedback and data on, but they aren't quite ready to release into the wild just yet. This is the betas tab. So what they're basically saying is there's going to be in the settings menu, there's a betas tab where you can just click on a beta or click on the betas tab, turn it on, and it's going to turn on the features that are in beta at that given point in time. So what that would mean that, for instance, the rumored wiggle update that's actually on this, right? Say they're putting that in beta, or you turn on the betas tab. Well, now your wiggle meter has updated to the new wiggle meter. That way, if it sucks and you absolutely hate it, you're not stuck with it. You can opt out of the beta. The bonus here is that if you are testing beta, like beta features, you get more blood points, right? So that's the idea. And so it's something that you have control over, and it's not forced on you. Now, of course, if the change is unanimously liked, or not unanimous, if the change that is in the beta tab is enjoyed by most of the community, then it probably will be implemented. And if you don't like it, then you are stuck with it. But this is just for testing primarily, right? So it's a new way of sort of beta testing through us without an update having to be locked to the PTB per se. And I think this is a great way to let console players have a little bit of insight, hopefully, into controls, a change of control schemes and things like that, opting into the betas tab and getting their valuable feedback so that everybody is included in this whole feedback process. Again, I'm saying this right now is we've seen a behavior that has been really tight-lipped in the past about updates and changes. And I think this is signaling a Behaviour Interactive that is very much more willing to have everybody's voices included before features go fully live. And this is something we should all want and continue to push for them to do and emulate. All right. So now we have the rumored wiggle update. It's really important to look at this image here because this is how that will sort of look. But the wiggle update is they changed it last year so that skill checks exist when you're on second stage on the hook. Previously on keyboard, you just smash keyboard, which was awful. It was really loud for streamers, but also it was just like button mashing is not great. And for people that have carpal tunnel or repetitive stress injuries, people who have specialized controllers because of disabilities or things of that nature, they can't mash buttons, right? And so skill checks, especially skill checks on a timer that aren't randomized and they just get smaller. It's very procedural. That has been great. They're bringing that to wiggling. What it looks like is it is a skill check with a bar on each side. And the skill check doesn't go away. It just is constantly spinning. And you go bing, 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 bing. And you just do that, right? And that's it. And that is the left to right motion that is wiggling, right? Because the idea for wiggling with A and D or something like that was to like wiggle off of the killer's shoulders. This gives you some balance between what existed before and what exists now. I think this is mostly good, especially since they said that you can rebind each, like the left skill check and the right skill check, to completely separate buttons, right? So if you are on controller and you want L1 and R1 to be like L1 for the left, R1 for the right, then you can do that, it sounds like. And that is good. That is ultimately a great thing. But if you do have accessibility needs, this is a push forward for Behavior. From last year, getting colorblind mode, getting subtitles for language, which are still being developed on, right? Adding the skill checks, adding this for wiggling, we're seeing a more accessible Behavior Interactive, and that's something that's good. Whether this change is good for you or not, let's be honest, smashing A and D is not like an immersive thing that we all love doing. It's something that we're sort of complaining about it's getting taken away from us because we're old and crotchety. But let's be honest, when this change comes out, you're not going to care. Like, it's not going to hurt your gameplay, right? So let's. I think accessibility is great. Let's continue to like push that forward, right? This will be in the first beta tab, they say. So that'll allow you to opt in as you please. And I think the first betas tab is actually going to come out in the PTB tomorrow, but I'll keep you guys updated. Now, here's the last one, all right? Toggle interactions. I think this is another push forward for accessibility, and we should praise this. Toggle interactions are basically, they're making it so that instead of holding a button to do something, you can just press the button, right? So when you're cleansing a totem, you have to hold the button, E to bless a totem, right? If you're working on a gen, you have to hold M1 to work on that gen, right? They're making it so you just toggle it, right? Just click M1 and you're working on the gen, and then click again to get off the gen. Or they're making it so that you can hit the sprint button to get off, right? So just like how you would hold the sprint and like, you know, if somebody's healing you and you got to get away from the heal, then you would hold sprint to get away from them healing you, right? The same thing could be said here. And again, this is just a great way to help with accessibility, right? If you remember in the past, actually, a lot of streamers used to hold M1 and hit the escape key, and that would lock them into the action so they didn't have to hold a button. I have a feeling a lot of streamers are going to particularly enjoy this toggle function. But again, this is an accessibility change. This is for people that have repetitive stress injuries, disabilities, specialized controllers, or just like can't hold buttons for that long. They should be expected to be able to enjoy the game that we love, let's be honest. So this is all good. This is a big deal. They say if you've made it this far, you've earned yourself a break from reading. Check back tomorrow for part 2. But before you go, we have a last bit of news for today. The player test build opens up Wednesday, January 5th. So I'm actually super wrong. January 5th is the PTB. Tomorrow is going to be dev update part 2. If it's that beefy, I have to hope that this is a good thing. And the dev update, this one didn't touch any balancing changes. It didn't talk about balance or anything of that nature. So going into tomorrow, what balance changes do you want to see for the game? Let's be honest, but let's not do the killer main, survivor main bullshit. Let's just talk about what you find frustrating and what you think could help alleviate those. Let's have great discussions. I can't wait to see you guys in tomorrow's video. We're back on YouTube. Did I give you the oi at the beginning? Anyway, thank you guys for being here. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and let me know in the comments below what you think. And until tomorrow, I'll be, what do we say? Praying to the entity to see you in the next video. Yes. Bye. Bye.